Big Red Couch, a podcast about making role-playing games. A group of GMs and players draw ideas from the mystery box and bring their game pitches to you, in which our heroes draw a card.
Okay, welcome to drawing number 12 for the Big Red Couch.
Randomising begins.
Did we decide who's actually doing the drawing this time?
It's totally my turn to do a drawing. I haven't done one yet.
Oh, okay, it's totally your turn.
Really? Well, I haven't done one for ages. So.
Yep, you definitely got one. There's
And
some
only
good
one?
treaties on it.
There is quite a lot of scribbly text here. Alright, what is it? Oh no! We've all been waiting for this one. Starbutt Magical Horse and the Existential Vacuum of Modern Acquaintance.
So, it's going to be an all ponies edition next week. Welcome, come, listen.
Please listen.
Some days later,
Welcome to the Big Red Couch. Today on the mics we have
Craig,
Kev,
Tonya.
and Ben. And you're all going to be very sorry you listened to this. The story idea is Starbutt Magic Horse and the Existential Vacuum of Modern Acquaintance.
Yep, that's what you wrote.
Yep. And as the Big Red Couch's official brony in the residence.
I have to take responsibility for that much, but hey, you guys trolled me heroically in the first episode, so consider this ample payback.
We totally did. High five.
What do we do?
We trolled him. Remember the
As
secret prison
Pony trials.
under Canterlot where Celestia's butch phrenologists lock up everybody with less than socially acceptable cutie marks.
Was that me?
I think it started with you, but we kind of...
I think butt phrenology sounds like me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's going on the inside of the next thing you publish, dude. Yeah.
Anywho.
Who wants to go first?
Again, apparently the finger of blame has been pointed in my direction. But yes, I have an idea for this. The year is 1976. After a totally hashed guitar solo, which would have been a virtuoso performance of complex and technically difficult piece, the lead singer, guitarist, and frontman for Starbutt Magic Horse
Okay.
is booed off the stage and descends into a hellish world of drink, caravans and trailer parks, and a personal hell of sorts.
So you're thinking this is not a pony game, because that's...
No. Well,
Right.
probably not.
Okay.
The notion is that at the tail end of the era when prog rock was at its maximum, a promising but fundamentally flawed artist has his entire world collapse underneath him and is offered a chance at redemption and return, but he must engineer a tour and travel from town to town, building up his audience again. This is a time when the optimism and the revolutionary thinking of the 60s has completely started to fail. Punk is starting to take hold. The complexity and the frankly pretentious notions that underpin a lot of the prog rock movement are being rejected for punk. It's a do-it-yourself, very raw aesthetic, or things that are being cultivated in a more commercial direction. It's the era just before the MTV takes off, the dawning of the 80s.
So how does this work as a game?
Good question. I was thinking, go with the era. Redbox D&D, match the band members up with the instruments they play and the classes they use, and drive them in a somewhat allegorical mission to rebuild their band's success, to get followers. What's the technical word in D&D? Retainers, yes. Roadies. And forge a path to greatness before the world forgets prog rock entirely. And
Basically to try and become one of the last icons of a style.
Yep.
Right.
So you were mapping the get to the bottom of the dungeon and turn left aesthetic to a return to stardom.
Yeah, pretty
Okay.
much. Pretty much. Part of the thing that is this formulated around is also Stephen King book, The Talisman. Stephen King and Peter Straub. And the notion, in this one, the protagonist is escaping across America, but occasionally he's escaping across another America, which the distances don't match up. And the world is more monstrous and shadowy and weird, and it sort of descends into fantasy. So the idea of having this vaguely fevered travelogue of these adventurers, it's very, very difficult to go very far in prog rock without running into something that isn't a reference to Michael Moorcock or to fantasy in general, or directly ripping off Tolkien.
Especially in the era of enormous murals spray painted onto the side of vans.
Indeed. So,
Fair enough.
So the notion of a heroic quest with axe in hand to redeem your fallen way of life.
Okay, so...
Deliberate double meaning on the word axe?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So class-wise, you're looking at 2, possibly 3 barbarians, paladin.
At least one mage for the synth.
Oh yeah, nice.
Keyboards are obviously
Yeah.
the magic users
Yeah.
with their various artifacts.
Depending on how you're going, you could go druid for singer, maybe? Depending if you were going with one of the more hippy-dippy
So I was
prog
thinking
rock
paladin.
approaches. Or
Because that's the person who's out the front being this shining example of what it means to be this band.
If we want to riff on Pratchett, they need to be an elf.
They kind of do.
Ooh, I hadn't even thought of the music
Yeah.
with rocks in. Yes.
soul music?
Yes.
Yeah, you've got 2 people with axes who kind of have to be fighters / barbarians. Cannot be a drummer without being a barbarian, I don't think.
I think
It's
the
in the
cleric.
rules.
Cleric?
Cleric. Blunt instruments,
Yeah.
keeping everyone in order.
No, that's the bassist's job. Timing comes from the bass, not the drums.
But the blunt instrument riff is hard to go
That
past.
is true.
Because it's one of those arbitrary arbitrary rules that come in the scene.
Yeah, so cleric, drummer, maybe fighter on bass, barbarian on lead guitar.
Okay.
No. Sorry, guys. The thief is on bass because no one ever notices them.
Nice.
Like it.
And they can be bitter about it as well.
Thief / tailor.
Oh no, I'm just the bassist.
Another part of the dramatic tension, apart from it being like the is it Umlaut is the heavy metal indie game?
That's what I was thinking when
Yep,
you started
yep.
describing this.
Nice.
Yeah, I'll try to find a link because I have heard people describing
Because that looks like fun.
playing umlaut.
The actual notion of having the manager being a Randall Flagg-like character from Stephen King's books, where he's like the character from Nick Cave's Red Right Hand.
Oi.
So not so much a hero then.
No, he's pretty much Satan.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Pretty much exactly Satan, but in a long duster, the
Thomas
wind and the
Covenant
rain.
without the angst.
Possibly. Yeah.
And less reap.
That's good.
Yes, I don't know much of Thomas Covenant, but that pretty much sums it up.
That sounds kind of fun. I do like the idea of the allegorical journey back to stardom.
Yeah,
Which lies at the bottom of a dungeon beyond the Red Dragon that is, I don't know,
It ends in
the
a battle.
Sex Pistols, maybe?
It ends in a battle of the bands, where you wind up with a punk band in opposition called Red Dragon.
Yes.
A punk band would never be called Red Dragon.
Yeah.
It totally falls down at that point, sadly.
No.
Okay, fine. We put it into a New
possible.
Zealand a New Zealand context, and who they are battling is the band Dragon.
Oh, they are stadium rock, so yeah, it's possible.
Yeah.
I would probably make it a real crescendo thing. You'd go for one of the surviving prog rock bands, but they've sold out. They've become commercial. they no longer do concept albums and so forth. So it's a real Genesis vibe. so
It's to be about the music, man. Tell that to the young man I just sniffed cocaine off.
Actually, if we're going with the idea of the terrible rebirth of taking something that was once vital and then warping it, if we go with the Genesis vibe, except they're run by a lich, that could be
Nice.
kind of interesting.
Archlich Phil Collins.
So he's very genial about it.
No, he's got no reason not to be.
Yeah.
His career will last forever. And it has.
Full disclaimer, I quite like prog rock, what I've heard of it. Most of this is inspired by a couple of crazy documentaries I've seen on YouTube. Wow, this was music for music nerds. Really, really big music nerds.
Yeah, every genre starts that way.
Oh, true. There's a line from a documentary she was like, it's like, we've been doing this for a while. I realised there are absolutely no girls turning up to our concerts. It's like, yeah,
I defeats the entire purpose of getting into this band.
pretty much.
Linux with guitars.
If I am mocking, I do so gently, I hope.
Well, put the links. Send us the links so we can put them in the show notes. 'Cause
Absolutely,
that sounds
absolutely.
kind of cool. I want to click on them.
All complaints can be directed to Ben.
Yep. And I want to say, I listened to The Court of the Red King, so no one can say I didn't do my research.
Court of the Red King.
Oh,
We
sorry,
didn't do his research.
Court of the Crimson King. So, no, I'm not.
I
not
still
as
don't know
well.
what that
Yeah,
is.
we
King Crimson is just a crazy band from the,
okay.
the late 60s, mid 70s who are right in the middle of it. Everyone says prog rock, King Crimson kind of follows. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So if anyone recognises that and the fact I misquote it,
I
yeah, they can.
cut that through so it comes out fine.
No, I think they should
Email
just
can be directed to us. Here's an email link in the website.
They should just shake their heads sadly at this point. Really.
Okay. We shall nod sagely and move on.
Indeed.
Cool.
I am now wondering what sort of band that the band would have to have a final battle against Sigur Rós.
Ooh.
Very prominent
Lordy.
influence, apparently. Yeah.
Oh, yes. I would pay money. I would pay good money to see a concept album done on a team-up between Lordi and Sigur Rós. I have no idea what it would sound like.
Team up or song by song switch off?
So what would Sigur Rós do to Hard Rock Hallelujah? And what would Lordi do to Olsen Olsen? Or indeed anything that
thinking
is
like
sung
that.
in a completely made-up phonetic language based on Icelandic.
Icelandic is basically made up, as far as I can tell.
Hate mail to the band at the Big Red Couch.
They are, however, keeping obscure letters alive.
True.
They are still keeping the Thorin alive, and I think they're the only ones who are doing it.
So you were saying that you were thinking of something different with the switching off?
Yeah, I was thinking sort of each band is singing their own songs, but you've kind of got a thematic switch off somehow.
Okay.
And if you have them seamlessly transition between songs, that would be brilliant.
Also, in the same way that symphonic Metallica concept album didn't.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Or you
sounds
could
about
do
right.
the Aerosmith Run DMC version where they're cutting in on each other's songs.
Nice.
I love those songs.
That would be kind of awesome.
That era was brilliant. I mean, Blondie doing rap and Run DMC and Aerosmith, because no one really knew how this works. They were just trying stuff.
Flinging it against the wall to see what stuck.
Exactly, and some of it is stuck in our heads forever. I bet there's a lot that didn't float at all, but...
Yep.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah, there's that. I could go next,
Okay.
given that I have notes written on the back of a big
If you
box store.
They're not our
Notes
sponsor.
during breakfast. Nice.
Indeed, notes written on the table at Carl's Jr.
Hey, they're not sponsoring anything other than your waistline, so I don't think I think we should cut that out.
That is true. Notes written on the table at an unmentionable fast food restaurant.
So unmentionable.
Indeed. Okay, well, after the initial groaning and crying and wailing of teeth at the concept of Starbutt, Magic Horse, and the existential vacuum of modern acquaintance, we were actually kicking around what the hell do we do with this in the flat, and came up with a few ideas.
So you were plotting.
Yes.
It was kind of necessary because we got as far as ponies and thought, no, my brain just fell over.
And so I just was spitting the ideas around and came up with different things. And so I decided to take a look at Starbutt Magic Horse and the existential vacuum of modern acquaintance and realised Starbutt Magic Horse sounds like a character from one of the Skullduggery Pleasant novels. As a bit of backdrop for our listener, this is a series of young adult novels written by an Irish chap, I believe, by the name of Derek Landy. I'll put some links in the show notes.
Go, Derek!
Go,
You like
Derek.
these books?
Yeah, very,
awesome.
very awesome books. And it is a world in which there is, this hidden magical world underneath, existing relatively quietly and not being noticed. And one of the big things to keep yourself safe, if somebody knows your name, they have a lot of power over you. But if you've chosen a name for yourself, that breaks that power.
It's not your true name.
Indeed. And so you have a focal character of the book called Skullduggery Pleasant. You have the book's protagonist, Valkyrie Kane. There's a pugilist and tailor by the name of Ghastly Bespoke. There's one of the antagonists called Billy Ray Sanguine. Really fun names. And
I always like
Starbutt...
Mr. Bliss as a name, particularly as he's a horrible, horrible man.
Indeed. Mr. Bliss has a certain something. There's
Yeah.
also China Sorrows.
Just very evocative names. Anyway,
Yeah.
therefore Starbutt Magic Horse does
Yeah.
kind of come across as someone who has understood the purpose
Intention. Yeah.
and is either taking the piss or has just misunderstood some of the underlying...
Yeah, picked their name when they were a 6-year-old. And so looking at it that way, all of a sudden, Starbutt Magic Horse and the existential vacuum of modern acquaintance is the story of an adventure. We've got Starbutt Magic Horse, the hero and protagonist, and the existential vacuum, there's your threat, of modern acquaintance. Modern acquaintance being the name of the antagonist, who is presumably going to use this thing, the existential vacuum. I'm not sure what it does, but it does very much sound as if it just removes something from existence. It's an adventure story. It's a magical adventure story in which somebody who calls themselves Modern Acquaintance, which in this context is a vaguely creepy name.
New friend?
Yeah. New friend. Possibly it's somebody who can just get into your head. Everybody likes them.
Everybody
knows Modern Acquaintance. He's everyone's friend.
Even if you've only just met him.
Indeed. I mean, to be fair, I actually know people like that in real life who just seem to go to a party and they know bloody everybody. Frankly, it's annoying as hell. As a lifelong introvert, it's irritating as hell, and frankly, I wish they'd just stop it. But that's a story for another day.
Or write us a handbook.
Said the introvert, speaking to a microphone, on which the other end is the internet.
Shut up.
So judgy.
So very judgy. He's even looming over me. Admittedly, because he's sitting in an office chair, I'm sitting in an armchair, and he's taller than me anyway. But still, very much looking down his nose at me. All superior and shit.
He kind of looks all like
Okay, that just...
sad ghost.
Yeah, pushing his nose at... Yeah, that just looks creepy, dude. Anyway, so that's what I came up with. A magical urban fantasy story.
Cool.
That sounds
Okay.
like a shit ton of fun.
So that sounds like a short story or a novelette. How do you make this a game? Because you've got two characters. Are these players? Is that the big damn thing that's going on while the players are scurrying around helping or hindering?
I think, depending on the system, because there are some systems out there, I believe, that can cope reasonably well with, we have our protagonist, and we have our protagonist's sidekicks / companions, and not turn into horrendous game balance problems. So for an adventure game, I think certainly Fate Accelerated and the various other Fate things can probably do that quite well. So that you have Starbutt Magic Horse and friends dealing with this situation.
I was just thinking, sorry to interrupt, the first thing that occurred to me was that it would be really quite thematically neat if you were doing something on the line of the Dresden Files group character gen, where you've got, everybody's coming up with titles of books that they've been in, their own stories, people featuring in each other's stories, and then we have this campaign, which is called Starbutt Magic Horse and the Existential Vacuum of Modern Acquaintance. It would be quite snazzy.
Okay.
Am I the only one thinking that the existential vacuum is an actual vacuum cleaner?
Yeah.
Not now.
No.
But prior to that you were, yeah.
No, he wasn't. Stole my idea.
Considering
I'm
something
now.
that removes the... you put it on something and it removes the quality of causality or something, I don't know.
You might just delete things.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it, if you use the existential vacuum, maybe it just makes them go away. Maybe it makes them never have existed. It will vacuum a person or a thing right out of reality. Because that's a creepy ass weapon.
But given that in Mr. Landy's world there's kind of two levels of reality, maybe it's a thing that basically removes your chosen name or basically kicks you out of the second level of the world.
Well, it's not sort of
You're just a human after that, so these weird people coming up to you and
something
saying, hey, have you got those magic rocks I asked for last week? What? Who are you? What are you? Why is your head a skull that's on fire?
So it removes your mystic personhood.
Possibly, I don't know.
Or
that
maybe
would be
it
interesting.
maybe it just separates.
I think it cuts you in half, so there's a magic person and...
I don't know the world, so I should probably borrow some books and sound
Yeah, you should.
They are a lot of fun. They are a great modern callback to the old pulp style, where villains are villains because they're villainous, and they have moustaches that they want to twist and puppies that they want to kick.
Names like Lord Vile.
Names like Lord Vile, and so the heroes can identify them quickly for punching. It's rollicking good time.
It does sound slightly role-playing game orientated as well.
The names are a very fun bit. After a while, it's very easy to come up with fun names for characters.
Melodious Crow, Venomous Moth.
Splooty Pelican. That was the receptionist.
It's starting to sound a bit like Game Doe as well.
Well, yeah.
The entire concept of Skullduggery Pleasant and anything around it is actually quite hard to not make games of. They're great. It's a
Often the
great
way
idea.
with YA books, because the concepts are just so huge. So thinking of comparing that with Larklight as a world.
Or The Haunting of Eliza Bell Cray.
I've noticed that there's been a movement in YA books, and indeed adult books lately, where adult books kind of shy away from consequence where YA doesn't, which is really strange. You have kids reading about things that change the world in a very permanent way, and not necessarily a good way.
It is an
So,
interesting
yes.
Yes, there is the odd... I do remember reading a YA novel at one point where we're getting up to the climax of the story, we've got 4 focal characters, and then 2 of them get killed off.
Yeah.
It's just... I wasn't aware you could do that in a YA novel. You just dropped a building on somebody and killed them.
And had it stick.
one.
Yeah.
Then there's Unwind.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Unwind, a fantastic book that is simply written and deals with concepts that adult literary fiction would back away from because, dude, creepy, agh, 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 agh.
Yeah.
Anyway,
They would treat it differently, I think is the...
Yeah.
And, yeah, Unwind treats it
It's a
like
horror novel.
you would experience it.
Which was the problem.
Yeah.
Anyway, I like your idea. I will
Yay.
play in your idea. That is a cool idea.
That is a cool idea.
Yes, I'm hazy on the system you'd use.
Fate.
We always say that.
We
It's
always
always
say
true.
But what's the...
Kevin would use fate for everything.
What's the
Please send
system?
payments too.
The system that the Buffy and Angel games would probably work adequately well, apart from some of the combats.
Is that uni system?
Cinematic uni system. Yeah.
Probably be adequately set up for that.
Yes, that has a much more, I was going to say tightly enforced, but I'll change it to role-based hero versus sidekick mechanic, in that the hero does get to do bigger, cooler shit. The sidekicks, on the other hand, have a lot more options available to them. They can get into trouble and get out of it.
Yeah.
It's kind of wide
By the
versus
way out
deep.
easier.
Skills-wise.
Yeah.
If you wanted to go with something that would emphasise the gritty noir nature of the world and everything in a way that the books really don't, but that keeps guns and magic really dangerous, you could use Ananamis.
That is true.
You'd want backup characters.
Really.
But it would be an
that's a
interesting
situation where everybody's already crazy. It's kind of a...
Well, I was thinking if you were using the system as a framework for things rather than keeping the necessary conceits for stuff, but...
Okay, same world, more crunch.
Yeah.
Right.
Same world, but things like firearms and magic. It's a D percentile system. You roll the D percentile. What it lands on, that's your damage. How many hit points do you have? 20. What did you roll? 55. Next character!
Don't get into gunfights.
You might end up with a lot of characters called Expendable Toe Rag.
I think that would be the reason not to go for it, actually. It's very difficult, I would guess, to do a pulpy game where people are not doing pulpy things because it would get them murdered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to do pulp using the Millennium's End system, for example, is
Not going to work.
just a slow boat to hell.
Wrong sort of pulp, I think you'll find.
That is a good point, yes. There will be pulp.
The tomato-y kind.
Oh my, there will be pulp.
Speaking of noir, assuming we're ready to move on.
Yeah.
I think we're ready to move on. I've
That was awesome.
gotten rid of all my notes. Unless I start reading out tax numbers.
Please don't.
I think I ended up with actual pony-based shenanigans.
So you're the one.
Apparently, you handed it to me.
I prefer to think I put it down and walked away slowly.
Yes, so I ended up with Noir in the Ponyverse, and starting with, obviously, the character, Starbutt Magic Horse, but thinking, okay, this is not Twilight Sparkle. With the serial numbers filed off, this is a person in her own right. It's a mare-centric universe. And the first thing that came to mind was kind of an opening monologue of the rain was pelting down on my office window. Then he walked in. 16 hands of scarlet trouble. I said, "You got problems, mister?" "Yup," he said. That's where I started.
Shall we wait until Ben stops turning colours?
That is a thing of beauty.
I think I've read that fanfic.
Can you
Damn
send me
it,
a link?
someone
I'll
got
put it in the
that
show
before
notes.
There was me thinking I was being original. Anyway, that's where I started, and I thought, okay, how do we turn that into a game? Because noir movies are normally about one guy against an edifice of corruption that they don't really fit into.
Mm-hmm.
So I started thinking about the tropes of noir. In fact, I spent an entire evening on TV tropes.
Are you sure? Was it more than one evening?
No, it was only one evening. And thinking, okay, if you take the titles for the tropes in noir, discounting the visual ones because there's no real way to do chiaroscuro or the Deutsch angle in a role-playing game that's mostly verbal.
But yeah, carry on.
Okay, we'll get back to that later, because now I'm interested. And I was thinking, if you basically have all of those sort of as titles on cards on the table and kind of have it as a joint storytelling thing, so nobody really has characters. They kind of, and anybody can be Starbutt Magic Horse, anyone could be Big Mac, anyone could be...
So it's...
You kind of making up characters as you go along, as the big boss, as
Okay, yeah, so it's more
dirty
about...
cop, lazy cop.
It's more about scene framing and improvising things.
Absolutely.
And you go around and say, right, we need the femme fatale to turn up now. We need...
Well, we did.
Yeah, here's the magic.
Mac.
Yeah, Mac's the femme fatale. Here's the matchbox clue.
Yeah.
Although why a pony is carrying around a matchbook, I don't know. But it's one of those things.
Sometimes you need to light the fire, and if you don't happen to be a unicorn,
That
you're
is
going to need
very true.
matches.
Wandering around from Salt Lick to Salt Lick, filling your saddlebags with useful matchbooks.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Going on an all-night cupcake bin. Waking up, passed out underneath a tree somewhere. Frosting smeared all over your muzzle.
Yeah, this is going from bad to worse, I can tell. But yeah.
I'm the worst!
You are.
So, yeah, I had kind of this shared conceptual thing going on. But when somebody brings up a character and says, this is the big boss, describes them, says what they're doing in response to Starbutt's investigation, that character remains the same but can be voiced by anybody. So they can come in or out of the story as long as they're not dead.
I like that idea.
I know there are some game systems out there, unsurprisingly in the indie line, which do have that, I guess, non-ownership of characters. So anybody can pick up an existing character or introduce a new one. Unfortunately, my mind is going completely blank on what any of them are called. Which is a bit awkward, but they're out there.
Not necessarily. Our listeners can send us emails to inform us of them so we can have a go at this. Or we can do some basic research later on.
Amusingly, when this drops, it's going to be during Gen Con. So possibly by the time this drops, I will have been able to ask someone.
Yes, we are speaking to you from the depths of the past, and Craig is in two places at once, through the mystery of time travel, or the fact that we have a buffer. So, yeah, if you see someone, it's a New Zealander with a beard, waist-length hair, who's probably lost.
Dude, not cool.
He will, however, be attempting to hand business cards to pot plants.
Yes, and probably looking for a fiasco game.
Probably lost, really, me. I'm just hurt now.
Okay, that was a stretch.
You're suffering from culture shock.
Oh, absolutely. Culture shock.
Sleep deprivation and...
jet lag, sleep deprivation, and possibly hotel breakfast buffets.
That is a
The
thing one
most
can suffer
delicious sort of suffering.
it's
It's like suffering, but there are waffles.
No, that's an interesting idea. From what little I know about Fiasco, it sounds similar because you nominate relationships with the characters that you have, but this one sounds more that you hand off. You make a setting, you've done your turn, you either hand off by having an interaction with another person playing another character, and then they do something else and they pass it off to someone else there.
It's open enough that I think it would be difficult to get into the swing of, sort of a little like Double Dutch. You kind of screw up a lot until you get the rhythm, but I kind of get the impression that it could go from any player to any player and be quite mobile.
I think Noir is a kind of a perfect setting for this, because, as you were saying, things like chiaroscuro and Dutch angle and so forth, but the idea that things are slightly off-kilter, maybe chiaroscuro might be something that you have a list of words that you can't use, or something like that to shape the language. Or just like the monologue from the
there's monologues throughout.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And even having like sort of a timed element or a random thing where the gumshoe gets knocked out. Some of those Dashiell Hammett books, the protagonist goes down like a sack of spuds, like every quarter of an hour, like clockwork. It's like
I kind of like the idea of having something where, okay, your protagonist is knocked out, they get to monologue about how shitty this is and pass off to whoever it was that knocked them out, who is now their own noir character.
Ooh.
I can see it actually leading the story off in different directions.
Something that also reminds me of is there is an excellent noir comic called Black Cat. Anthro, beautifully drawn. And yeah, it has all the tropes, but the characters having features of animals are used to portray personalities. It's just not random guy as a dog. It's the haggard-looking detective. It's it's the Weasley-faced little guy is Weasley-faced in the literal sense.
Because he's a weasel.
He's a
right.
weasel.
Okay.
But it's a beautifully drawn and very, very noir stories.
Cool.
So that's the kind of thing that reminds me of. I like the interesting setting, and so you'd definitely be playing partially for laughs, but...
Yeah, but I'm not really into super serious games. That will have come across by
I
now.
really like the idea. I think it's creative and clever, and the cards thing is neat.
It's the only way I could think of making sure that enough of the tropes would crop up to make it stay noir.
Yeah. I think if you had traditional troop play for a noir game, you would wind up with pulp, because you would have a group of people banding together against the edifice, and we would be right back to Skullduggery Pleasant, which is awesome, but it's not quite the same thing.
Yeah, you would end up with Two-Fisted Daring Do.
Yeah.
Whereas Pulp kind of more has the feeling of, I have no fucking clue what I'm doing and everyone is against me.
Though Two-Fisted Daring Do as a My Little Pony character does sound awesome.
Or just Daring Do.
I think there's already a Daring Do. Isn't she an adventurer in stories?
Yeah, she's a pulp adventurer and the only books Rainbow Dash is apparently able to read.
Because they're awesome!
And they have pictures.
And she has learning difficulties, apparently.
Is it my turn?
I think
Yeah, I
so.
think so.
Okay. I had 2 ideas, neither of which are very long. The first one was totally mutinying at the concept and just doing a straight My Little Pony game. But fortunately, I've run into something that's quite useful for that recently, in that the Kickstarter backers have access to Fate Accelerated Edition, and just in case anybody's interested, Evil Hat are releasing the PDF under Pay What You Want. So if you do a web search, and Will and Data to put something in the show notes, you can just go and get hold of the PDFs at the moment. So they're out there. And I think Fate Accelerated Edition is one of the best out-of-the-box My Little Pony games that you could ever want, because the whole system framework is that rather than having skills, you have approaches, like whether you solve a problem cleverly, or forcefully, or sneakily, or flashily, or any of these. And there's 6 of them. We have 6 ponies. I've started playing around with building the characters with a little Excel spreadsheet to make sure that somebody is best at each thing and somebody is worst at each thing, and it pretty much writes itself. So that would work out rather nicely. I'm thinking of putting up the character sheets that we eventually come up with on the site under a kind of gaming resources thing that I can start adding to, because I just mess with character sheets when I'm bored. So that would be the straight option. The other option that occurred to me is that we could make it a game of monsters and other childish things, where again, Starbutt Magic Horse is someone's monster.
Okay. So you have a kid, and their imaginary friend who's not very imaginary is Starbutt Magic Horse.
Yes, who is, depending on the angle that we want to go with, they saw part of My Little Pony at one point and then forgot chunks of it, and so you may have a slightly more Lovecraftian version of Twilight Sparkle, or something along those lines, or it could be completely independent. It just depends what you want to do for the lulz. And I got the idea that the existential vacuum of Modern Acquaintance was another monster, so that you have this vast, depressed engine of suction that's wrecking the place for some reason, or just needs to be cheered up. Either way. That's the whole concept.
Okay. You do have, as part of the monsters universe, a natural process that happens where kids outgrow their monsters.
Yeah.
Normally.
Yeah.
Or, if they don't outgrow them, go completely crazy, or become part of the monster.
That's not dark at all.
Not at all.
Not at all,
And we haven't even talked about the dreadful secrets of Candlewick Manor. So, yeah.
Admittedly, for Starbutt Magic Horse, in that context, I am thinking in, I think it's the 4th Girl Genius graphic novel. There is a horse, nominally, that turns up at a campsite at night. Turns out to be less horse and more horrifying eldritch horror of horribleness.
Which you could do, except they would also be legitimately the kid's best friend.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually seem to remember part of the book for Monsters and Other Childish Things actually had a write-up for a unicorn with fiery hooves and...
An endlessly fractal horn, yes.
Endlessly fractal
or
horn.
something?
Something like that.
I'd forgotten
Who
that.
hates Alligator Joe, somebody else's monster?
Something like that, yeah.
And a parallel thing that I was immediately thinking of was the webcomic Heavenly Nostrils, which is a very Bill Watterson-styled girl and her not pet at all unicorn.
Bestest friend unicorn.
Indeed. And the problems of life that they tackle.
That was a very sweet comic.
Yes, not at all eldritch and horrible.
They're bad people.
And that was the whole thing I came up with.
Went surprisingly better than I intended.
Yeah.
You intended? You expect? Surely.
Well, for a while there, we were all thinking about actual mutiny.
Wait, that's not fair. You wrote down the trolley thing, put it on
we
a
did.
card.
And then we were going to try, and when it hit the too hard basket, pick something else.
Fair enough.
I didn't want to tell you about it, because it would be funny. But as it turned out, it turns out it's very difficult to end up in the too hard basket. I mean,
Yeah.
we didn't manage it with star.
It's true.
Wow. Yes, there was much less bloodshed than I was anticipating.
I don't know. Some of those scenarios were pretty gory. Okay. Well, thanks for joining us, folk.
Yeah.
We hope you
See you
enjoyed the
next
show.
time.
Okay.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Next time on the Big Red Couch.
Excellent. The President's Earth Chakra is missing.
Yes! Want to hear more of our shenanigans? Then go to hoarde.net and click on the button that looks like a couch. The Big Red Couch is released under Attribution, Non-Commercial, Share-alike 3.0 Unported from CreativeCommons.org. All music on the show comes from the album Universal Fluff Theory by Krakatoa. Visit them at krakatoa.com or follow the link from our page. See you next time!